Good morning. This is VirtualPBX-admin training. Uh, just a slightly early start, so I'll wait a few minutes for people to arrive. Just making sure that our stream is working properly here. And just as an FYI, we do record these trainings, so you can always come back and watch the training if you have to leave in the middle or, real life or other work emergencies that take you away from this. You can also go to our support pages. So go to virtualpbx.com, mouse over support, and select dash support. You'll see a recorded training there. And further down, you'll see the various guides we have for different features and guides for making use of different VoIP devices and or setting them up. Please feel free to make use of the chat to ask any questions about a feature as I'm going through it. But it looks like we've hit 10 o'clock, so let's get started. On the screen here, you've got our Dash login page, which is at dash.virtualpbx.com. It's going to ask you for your username, which is your email address, followed by a password, which you were hopefully emailed, and the account name, which is typically your company name. Now, if for some reason you don't have your password, for example, you can go ahead and click on the Forgot Your Info link here at the bottom right. And the system's going to, again, ask you for the email, right, the username, and then you need either your account name or one of your company phone numbers on the account. And then you click on Reset Password. You'll get an email. It'll then have a link to get you in, and you can change the password to something you can remember, or just set a password if you were never given one. Then it'll log you out after you've done that. So you'll be back at the login page, and you simply fill in your information. And for most people, I recommend just click on the Remember Me, so you don't have to keep typing it in. And then we'll get you logged in. Now, if it's your first time logging into Dash, you actually don't start here. The system will start you over here. So basically give your basic account information. The Dash wizard will pop up with little boxes showing you what the individual things are. The main thing for an admin that tends to be changed is under the account settings here, and you've got your time zone, right? So you can set the time zone properly for your office location. Now, I'm using a test account. On your accounts, you have a live account. You'll have a separate section over here on the left underneath where it says user. And that's where you have your billing information. So you can update your credit card. You can see invoices. You can see your service plan, etc. Now, once you're done in this area, you can just hit close up here at the top right. And you'll be back here on our dashboard page. And again, that first time logging in, the wizard will pop up. It'll start highlighting different things. So along here at the top, again, you click on your name, you can get back to that account page. You can change the company time zone. This right here, right next to it, D&D, right, do not disturb. You can toggle yourself to be on do not disturb or not, right? You can turn it off or on. Next, we got the little question mark icon. And you can mouse over here. You can start a chat session with our support team, right? So they can walk you through a particular feature. Next, you got Learn More. This will take you to the support pages that I've mentioned previously. Over here is the online store. This goes to store.virtualpbx, so you can order a VoIP phone, for example, or a headset, or a router. And then we have the web phone link. This only shows up once your user has a web phone assigned to it, and it'll show up the next time you log in. Right? You'd have to log out and log back in for it to show up. The the web phone is a kind of soft phone, right? Software application uses your internet connection to make and receive calls. And in the case of the web phone, it is making use of either Chrome or Firefox on a computer to make and receive calls. Next up, we got the menu icon, right? 3 horizontal lines. We sometimes call it the hamburger icon. This takes you to other features of Dash. Some of these features, like ACD queues, for example, these have fees associated with them. Some of these are only available depending on your plan as well. And then we've got the logout icon. Now over here on the left, these are the core features of Dash. Again, some of these are plan specific. So like auto attendance is not available on every plan, but it is on several plans. So we'll cover that. But yeah, we'll be going through all of these. Over here in the middle, we've got our total users. These are people on your account. They're making and receiving calls. They have a voicemail. They have probably devices, etc. Down below that, we've got total devices and a breakdown of those devices, right? Cell phone, that's pretty self-explanatory. Web phone, which we just talked about. Soft phone, this would be an other soft phone. So you can have a soft phone from Counterpath, another company that produces soft phone applications. This could also be your VirtualPBX soft phones if you're making use of our soft phone app. All right, SIP phone, this is a physical VoIP phone, right? So VoIP stands for Voice over Internet Protocol. SIP, I believe, is the Session Interactive Protocol. I always forget. But this is a physical phone, right? This will sit on your desk, or it will have like a little box you connect to your router and then have handsets connected to it. There are multiple kinds of VoIP phones on the market. So if you're shopping for one, you want to make sure you're looking for a SIP compliant or SIP compatible phone. And you can, when you get to devices, you'll see a list of manufacturers and specific model numbers that you can look for. Landline, it's pretty self-explanatory. All right, then we have unregistered devices, right there. I have 11. So this is in reference to my VoIP devices. The system has detected that 11 of them are not connected, meaning we can't send calls to them or get calls from them. Now, that could be simply just because someone didn't turn it on or didn't plug in a phone properly. This could also be because maybe one of your remote staff is having an internet issue, right? You know, Comcast in a particular city is out. So your VoIP phones aren't going to work in that instance. All right, total numbers. Oops. Let's go back. I really need to stop doing that. All right, total numbers. These are all your customer-facing phone numbers, right? So your customers can dial these numbers and get to your account. Now, if we go down here, you notice I've got spare numbers and assigned numbers. So an assigned number is actually a number in use, right? So it actually goes to somewhere on your system. Goes somewhere on your system. Excuse me. That could be one of your main numbers, for example. That could be a number associated with a particular user on your account. You can go to a ring group, a fax box, an ACD queue, etc. Now, in a spare number on your account, but it's not going anywhere. You're not using it, right? So maybe you had a special Christmas promotion and you had a specific number or several phone numbers associated with that promotion. Now that Christmas time has passed, you don't want to get calls from those numbers because they're probably now robo-dialers or just, people randomly calling those phone numbers. So you can put them in spare so you can keep those numbers for a future campaign. But now they're not ringing to anything and not using up minutes on your plan. Now, one thing to keep in mind on your plans, the various plans have an allotment of phone numbers, anywhere from 1 to 15, I believe is the current range. And those are included as part of your monthly plan price. Spare numbers still count towards that allotment, right? So whether you have assigned or spare numbers, they count towards your allotment. If you're going over that allotment, then you're being charged anywhere from $1.99 to $4.99 per number per month. So if you know you're not going to use a number, then you might as well get rid of it. Next, we have this other breakdown here, US toll-free and US DID, right? Toll-free, 800-888, right, all the way down to 833, right? And these toll-frees actually also work in Canada. US DID, that just means a US local number, right? So you can have a phone number in, say, Cupertino, California, right, near Apple, or you can have a phone number in Elmira, New York, or anywhere in between. Now, if you're interested in an international number, that would include Canada, you can have those on your account. You're going to need to email porting, P-O-R-T-I-N-G, at virtualpbx.com. They'll need to know the city and country that you're looking to have a number in. Some of those countries have additional requirements, right? Some, like Germany, for example, requires a proof of presence within that city. Usually a utility bill is fine. Others don't care, and so others have even more stringent requirements. So if there are any additional requirements, our porting team will let you know what those are, and then we'll proceed from there. Next up, we've got conference bridges. This is just saying you have 6 users, or in this case, I have 6 users who I've enabled conferencing on. One thing to know about the conference bridge feature is you're not able to enable that feature on a user until you have assigned a conference number to the main conference number to the account. All right, over here on the right, we've got your main company numbers. All these 4 numbers right here, these numbers all behave in the same fashion, meaning they're all going to ring to the same location, they're all going to play the same main greeting. All right, now we got your conference number. You can have multiple conference numbers if you're so inclined. The fax box number, you can have by default 1 in the fax box here. This enables faxing on the account. The fax box number itself is the number you receive faxes on. The company directory, this is a download link for a text file. Basically shows all your users with their extension numbers. The softphone directory, also a download link. This is for use with the VirtualPBX desktop softphone application. Basically, you download this file, you upload it into the desktop softphone, and this allows you to see the status of the rest of your coworkers who are making use of the VirtualPBX desktop app. Right, so I can see, oh, John's on a call. I better not call him right now if I need to talk to him about something. I can just wait until he's off that call. All right, store discount code. Just for being a VirtualPBX customer, you get a discount in our web store. And then lastly here, we have the account realm. This is used in a couple different things. First, it's used in programming a third-party device or application. Right? So if you're using a soft phone from Counterpath, you would need this piece of information. If the VoIP phone you happen to want to use is not on our list under SIP phones, then you would also use this piece of information to program that device. The other thing it's used for is to send a fax out. So on Dash, currently, it's an email to fax system. So you create an email. That from email address has to be your user email address, typically speaking. In the to field of that email, you put the plus sign, the number 1, the area code and phone number you're faxing to, the @ symbol, and then your account route. And then you simply attach a PDF or a TIFF file and hit send. You don't need to type anything in the body of the email because that's not going to get transmitted. The system just utilizes the email as a delivery method to get the fax document to the fax system, right? It then takes the attachment only and converts that into basically analog signals to send it out via fax to whichever fax number you're sending it to. Regarding the fax, it's 1 attachment per email, and the largest file I've been able to fax out has been 7 megabytes. That took about an hour, a little bit more. So there is usually a time delay in terms of getting a fax to get sent out. All right, up here we've got the company caller ID. Now, unfortunately, my streaming software here restricts or doesn't always show all the pull downs, but you can select any of your main numbers. right? And whichever one you do select, that becomes your overall main number. It becomes a default for a couple of different things. Then you've got the company call ID name or CNAME. This is restricted to 15 characters, including spaces and special characters. After you click Save Changes down here at the bottom, that information gets transmitted to the other carriers who support CNAME. Right, so then when you make an outbound call from a VoIP device, right, we transmit the CNAME information as part of your outbound caller ID. Now, when you make that outbound call, it can route to any number of carriers, right? Say 12 different carriers, could be a couple dozen technically. Not every carrier supports CNAME, so if your call happens to go through one of those carriers, your CNAME information will not make it to your destination, right? Usually, right? So any carrier you've probably heard of, big name-wise, like AT&T, Verizon, etc., they all support CNAME, at least at sub-level, right? It's the small regional carriers that may or may not. That's usually where it comes to breakdown. Also, for cell phone providers, right? The cell phone provider determines what shows up on their cell phone displays, right? So like when you get a call and it says spam risk, right? That's your cell phone carrier saying, hey, we think this is a spam call. So ultimately they decide if the CNAME information gets transmitted or not. I know in some cases they have CNAME as an additional page feature, right? So every month you have an additional fee if you want the CNAME information to show up on your cell phone. Now, even for the carriers who do support CNAME, right, if they're having a heavier than expected call volume, right, then CNAME information is not always going to go through, right? Their primary focus is to connect the call, followed by having the caller ID, right, the phone number show up, and then in distant third is the CNAME. Obviously, if they're having an outage, again, we're concerned about getting calls connected. Right. Company emergency information, or E911. Just want to put your address that's associated with this phone number. Each of your phone numbers can have their own E911, so that way you can also have your VoIP devices associated with different phone numbers for E911 purposes. You just want to make sure the addresses are accurate, so that if someone does call 911 from a VoIP phone, your emergency services show up at the correct place. Any changes, you click on Save Changes. All right, hold music. So Dash, you can upload your own hold music or your own media files for several different things. Dash will accept .mp3 or .wav, .wav files. You want to make sure they are under 1 megabyte, that they're recorded in mono, and they're again .mp3 or .wav. Sorry, I repeated that part. Now, hold music on Dash is defined as once a call has reached one of your users and they have pressed hold on their VoIP phone. That's when hold music will play. Right, to upload a file, you would click on the upload button here. Then you would click on browse to find the .wav or MP3 file. And then over here to the right, this blue and white up arrow icon, you would click on that to upload the file. You would then get a status bar going across. And once it's complete, you would click on Save Changes. Now, hours is actually part of main number, so we're just going to go to main number to go through all of it instead of hop up and down. Now, the main number almost always takes a long time to load, and that's just because it includes a lot of features. Specifically, I believe it's tied to the virtual receptionist that tends to cause it to be slow to load. All right, main company number. If you click on this, you'll see all your main numbers. If you decide you don't want to use one of these any longer, you can click the red and white unassign here to the left. And now that just removes it from being a main number. Right, that just moved it now into my spare number pile, so I can use it for anything else. Now, anywhere you can assign a number, so main number, right? Your conference numbers, your fax box, any of your users, your ring groups, etc. Anywhere you can add a number. You're always gonna have a choice of add it from a spare right? So any of your spare numbers on your account, you can just add right in, or you can buy a number, your local or toll free. Now, if you're under your allotment for your plan, by clicking buy, you're just adding it to your account. You're not going to be charged an additional amount as long as you're under your allotment for your plan. But so if you want to buy a local number, you just enter in the area code, right? So let's go with 408, Silicon Valley, and we've got several numbers. Wow, 0780, I'm surprised that's still there. But you can scroll down, and the list will keep propagating, assuming that there are numbers available. I'm guessing this 5080 exchange is relatively new, or really released to us. Normally, I don't see numbers in sequence this much, especially for the 408 area code. But any number that you want, you would just click on add, right? Little number one, add it to your cart, shows the number. If you decide you don't want it after all, you can delete it. You can add multiple numbers at once. And then you would click on buy numbers. This is just the system verifying the number was still available, and then now it's adding it and activating it to your account. On any of your numbers, you see this little gear icon here. You can click on the caller ID, right? So you can put in the CNAM information. You can turn on accepting CNAM on the inbound legs of calls, right? You have E911 as an option, right? So you can set up the E911 information for that phone number. Prepend, this is a VoIP option. So you can add text in front of the caller ID that shows up on the VoIP phone's display. This gives your staff a heads up about what the call might be about, right? If you have like region specific phone numbers. In terms of buy numbers, toll free, it's even easier. It denotes the various prefixes that are available. You just select the one that you want, do a search. Now, if there's nothing available, you can double check that with our porting team. Otherwise, but for toll free, again, you can go through and search the other prefixes. Now, if you're looking for a vanity toll-free number, right, so a number that spells something, right, so 1-800 cleaners or something like that, for that, you're going to want to send a request to our porting team, so PORTING at VirtualPBX.com. Just let them know that you're looking for a vanity toll-free number and what you want it to spell out, or the numbers involved for the last 7 digits. They will look up that number for all the available toll-free prefixes and let you know if it's available or not, at least through us. All right, office hours strategy. So typically, if you just signed up, you're going to be set at 24-hour open office. However, most of our customers tend to go to custom office hours. For each day of the week that you're open, you put a check mark. And then in the boxes here to the right, you put your open hours in 24-hour/military time. You also have the option down here at the bottom, which I don't know if it shows up properly on YouTube, but you can say your whole facility is closed for lunch. If so, right, you put a check mark saying yes, we're closed for lunch, and then you put your lunchtime hours in those boxes. Next up, we got office holidays. First and foremost, if you're closed for holidays, you put a check mark. And then over here to the right, under Add Holiday, you've got your options for single day, date range, and advanced. Right, single day right here, like each one of those creates a new row, right? So you put a name in this first box for whatever the holiday is, and then you select the month and the date, which this is obviously off because I believe it's the 15th this month. For date range, like we have up here for Christmas, you give a start date and an end date. Basically, when this date rolls around, the system goes into holiday mode. Once this date, the close date goes by, boom, you're back in normal mode. And then here, retreat, right? This is an example of the advanced. I'm saying, hey, the first Friday in July, we're closed, right? Company picnic day. Now, one thing to be aware of is that there's no year indicator for any of these. So for the date range, you want to avoid New Year's Eve and New Year's Day in the same date range. You just want to do each one individually. Uh, Otherwise, the system will put you in closed all year. Now, next up, we have incoming call handling. Now, these are for your main numbers. You notice here we have subtabs here. I have lunch hours, I have after hours, and holidays. These all refer to my main numbers, right? Those 4 numbers I have up here. So when a call comes in on any of those numbers, it goes to during my open hours. Right now, I'm sending it to my virtual receptionist. If I click on this, it's a link. It's going to open up a new window. Over here on my left, the main menu, right? These are buttons on the phone that my inbound callers will press to navigate through my phone system. Over here on the right, these are my greeting options. So this is where I tell customers what to press, right? Probably say something like, thank you for calling. You can include things like, any specials you have, your hours of operation, etc. But ultimately, you do want to tell them, press 1 to go to the directory, 2 to get to my support queue, right? 3 to leave a message, 4 to get to my billing queue, 6 just go to my sales group, etc. Right? You can set these up by clicking on Add Route. You have a default route as well as 0 through 9, and then you tell it where to go. So we'll go up here to this one here. You see here, let's go all the way to the top. So Smart Directory, you can send it to any specific user. And when you send a call to the user, it rings all their devices. If they don't pick up, it goes to their voicemail. Right? I can send it to one of my call queues, right? So a department with advanced routing options. I can send it to a specific device. We don't typically recommend that because if the device doesn't pick up, then the call ends, or it ends up potentially in that device's voicemail, which may or may not be good, depending on your preferences. You can have it go to a media file. Again, not typically recommended because once the media file is done playing, the call ends. Groups, again, this is departments. These are the groups have a more simplified call routing options than the queues. Advanced call flows, these are actually additional auto attendants. So if your plan includes additional auto attendants, then you can make use of sub-menuing, right? So I could have make calls come into my main menu, and I can say press 1 for English and 2 for Spanish, right? So then I would have 1 and 2 go to additional menus where, when they press 2, they go to that menu, they get a Spanish greeting, they get their options read off to them in Spanish, and then they can get to my Spanish-speaking staff members. Whereas if they press 1, they get the English greeting, and they get sent to English-speaking staff members. And then you can send it to any voicemail box on the account as well. And they have different icons. You can get an idea of where you're sending calls just by looking at the icon. All right, greeting types, text to speech. You simply type in a greeting, click update. You would click save and then save changes, right? This is a computerized robotic voice. Generally, I recommend that for customers who have never used a PBX system or a startup who they may not be sure how they're gonna route things right off the bat, so they're experimenting initially. Because there's no charge for text to speech, and it's pretty easy to change those. Upload your own file. Again, you can choose a file on your computer, find a .wav or .mp3 file, record it in mono under 1 megabyte. You would click update and then save down here and save changes over here to the right. Choose from an existing recording. This is actually a pull down. It will show you all of your existing recordings, including voicemail greetings. So you might want to be a little bit careful about which ones you select. You can record it over the phone. Now, this got a PIN number right here. So by default, the system wants you to record with a VoIP device, you can change that down here under settings where it says allow outside recording. When you turn this on, that means you're saying, hey, cell phones or landlines can call in, and if they know the PIN number, they can change the recording. Right, now this PIN number is specific to this time of day. So this 0907, this will only work during my open hours. If I call in, say like at 9 p.m., right? So my system is in after hours mode at that point. 0907 won't work because I'm in my after hours mode, right? So you can only make use of it during your open hours. That means your system has to be in open hours to change the recording. Now, another thing to keep in mind about recording it over the phone. If you just started, there's no big deal, right? You can just call in to your main number, you enter in. The system will tell you there's been no recording set for this menu. You enter in the PIN number, it walks you through recording. If you already have a greeting in place, right? So we'll call it greeting A is currently playing, and you call in, you enter this PIN number, you can record a new greeting, but it overwrites the content on greeting A, right? The file name stays the same, it's just you overwrite the content. So if you want to save the current greeting that you're using, you would want to unassign it as your main greeting if you're going to call in to record it over the phone. Or just upload a separate greeting when we get to the greetings manager. Professional recording services, when you click order, this will take you to Snap Recordings. They have 80 to 100 voice actors and actresses to choose from. They have different versions of English, French, and Spanish. You can do multilingual greetings. They have what they would call a Holt treatment, so a mix of a script and music files. They have different packages available. Right? They handle their own billing, usually via credit card. They deliver via email. They actually have, I think, also options for express processing. But then once you get that file, you can just upload your own file. All right, settings. So number of retries on misdial. Basically, if someone calls in and they keep pressing, let's say 5, which is not allocated to anything, so they get 2 tries total, right? Because this is the number of retries. So they get 1 try, and then so they get the initial try, and then they get 1 retry, and then in this case, they would get sent to my default route going to my PBX directory. Now, dialing timeout, this should actually be an integer, so we'll change that to 1. This is how much time the system waits after it hears a button press before it assumes the inbound caller is done, right? So I press 5, the system waits for a second, says, oh, you're done, invalid option. It'll play the greeting again. Hopefully then I change it and I press 6 instead. It waits a second, and then it sends me to the ringback test green group. Right, allow outside recording. This is typically recommended to be off, so that way only your VoIP devices can call in, i.e. one of your staff members versus a random cell phone or landline. And then allow dialing extensions. If you turn this off, that means the inbound caller, they can only press these menu options to navigate to the system, right? If you turn it on, that means that the inbound caller knows an extension number on the account. They can enter that and then get to that extension. Now, for the default route, I don't generally recommend it just because of robo-dialers, right? Calls can come in, right? A robo-dialer go through retries and then say gets to a voicemail box, right? That's going to use up your planned minutes, or annoy you or your staff dealing with these random voicemails they get through, or if they actually bring to a person. So in general, or in most cases, I don't really recommend default route, but again, it just depends on how you're going to be making use of the system. And typically, we see most robo-dialers come in on toll-free numbers, so if you're only using local numbers, it's probably safer to make use of the default route. Now, any changes you make under main menu, the greetings, or the settings, you do need to hit save here, and then you need to hit save changes over here under incoming call handling. This section option here, call comes in, I'm offering it to Bob. If Bob's not able to answer, it goes to that same virtual receptionist we were just looking at. We'll just pop it back up here so we can see it. So the point of this option is I'm giving a staff member or multiple staff members a chance to answer the call first. And if they're not able to, or because they're busy, for example, then the inbound caller gets that virtual receptionist so they can enter an extension number or menu option. All right, this is a pull down, so you can get to any of your users, any of your devices. You can get to a media file. You can get to your ring groups, and you can get to your queues. As well as your advanced call flows. All right, third option here, call is offered to Bob. If he's not able to answer, it goes to his voicemail. I often see this option more for holidays. Now, again, this has the same options as that second option. However, it has one additional one, which is right here, just skip the voicemail. So you can just say, hey, call comes in, go straight to Bob's voicemail, right? So that's why I see it typically more often under holidays for customers. And then lastly, you've got the advanced call flows, meaning you're sending a call to one of your other attendants. Generally not recommended, because if you're going to make use of one of your other attendants, you're better off making your main numbers the main, switching whatever your main numbers are to your alternate attendant and making that alternate attendant the main company under virtual receptionist. Now, these other tabs, right, they have the same options, but their virtual receptionist will be different. All right, they'll have different menu options. You'll have different greetings. Etc., which makes sense, right? You would want a different lunch hours greeting if you're closed for lunch versus your open hours, right? Same for after hours. And again, you can choose any of these options. One thing I should point out, for both the second and third options here, when you're offering calls to a user or a group or a queue, the system is hard-coded to only offer calls to these people for 20 seconds. That's it. So if you're offering it to Bob here and he only has a cell phone, it may not be enough time for his cell phone to actually ring. All right. Let's go main conference number. Again, you can add multiple, right? Add for spare, by numbers. You can do a custom greeting if you want. This is a text-to-speech greeting, and you can just type in what you wanted to say. One thing I should point out, for text-to-speech, both for under here, the conference number, or for the virtual receptionist. Let's go back to that real quick, maybe. All right, the text, you can have about 350 to 450 characters for your greetings. So basically, if you make it extremely complicated, they might be even less than that. So the text-to-speech is good for short initial greetings. If you want something more complicated than that, you're probably going to want to look at recording it over the phone or uploading your own file. But once you assign a number to your main conference number, then you can enable conferencing on your individual users. The main fax box, again, you can assign one number. Now, unfortunately, on this account, the fax box is broken. On your accounts, it's not. And if you click on the Edit the Fax Box option here, this will pop up a window with two fields. The first field is for inbound notification. Basically, you put in an email address, and that email address will get an email every time a fax comes in, right, with a PDF saying, you just click on this attachment and see what the fax is. The second field is for outbound permissions. And typically that's for use with, if you own your own email domain for your company, right? So you own abccleaners.com and all your staff members have an email address that ends in that. You can put that domain there, and then anyone on your staff can fax out via their email, even if they're not a user on your Dash account, right? So you've got Bobby, the intern, who's working over the winter here. You can have him send faxes from his email without having to add him as a user on your account and increase your bill. right? You just need to know that +1 area code and phone number at your account realm, and then attach a PDF. All right, auto attendance. So some of our plans allow you to have multiple auto attendants, and there's a couple of reasons you would want that. The first is you have multiple businesses coming into the same account, right? So your same staff members are taking calls for your dog walking business, for your cleaning business, for your painting business, right? But you want each of these businesses to have their own phone numbers, their own main greetings, right? Because they're very different from each other. But you can still route calls to your same receptionist group, and then they hand out the work orders to the staff members. So each attendant can have, or each auto attendant can have their own number, or they can have actually multiple phone numbers if you so want, and they can have their own greetings. The other reason would be, as I mentioned previously, is for sub-menuing, right? So you want to give options on your main number, and that some of those options go to an additional menu where they have their own greeting with another set of options. And going down. Currently, attendants are limited to 10 on an account. That's something to be aware of. But to create an attendant, you click Add Attendant here at the top. You give it a name and an extension number. That means technically your staff can transfer calls that came in on your main number to one of the other auto attendants, so they can then, an inbound caller can hear the main menu for those attendants. Once you've created them, if you click on the name, right, you can delete an attendant if you're no longer using it. Here, right now it shows unavailable in main menu. If I click on that, I say available main menu. That means I'm making this available as a sub-menu option in any of my auto attendants or under my main number, virtual receptionist, right? Otherwise, if I put it back to unavailable, that means it's a standalone auto attendant. Here, for example, you see it's got multiple numbers. You can add from spare. You can buy numbers. You can click on the extension box. You can add extensions. You can unassign an existing extension. And then if you click on the wrench icon here under settings, it'll take a little while to load, but then you see, hey, calls come in, goes to the virtual receptionist. Now, there's lunch hours, there's after hours, and there are holidays, right? These times match what you have under your main number, right? So each one of these attendants will have the same open hours as your main auto attendant or main virtual receptionist, right? Same open days that they're open, etc. Right? So if you want, right, let's say this Pete Maverick Mitchell is its own, has a different set of hours. Let's say I want this one to also be open on, they say, Tuesday through Saturday, right? But under my main system here, I'm only open Monday through Friday. This would have to be either advanced configuration, meaning you might have to pay a fee to our product specialist to set this up special for you, or you would have to have a separate account for it. It just depends how complicated you're going to go. But under each of these, you only have the option of sending it to the virtual receptionist, right? You don't have those other kinds of options. But the virtual receptionist is unique to each one, right? So you can add routes, they'll have their own main greetings, etc. All right, next up we've got devices. All right. So on the device pages, you see the devices on the account. Green means it's registered / the system can send a call to it. Red means it's unregistered, so we're not going to be able to send a call to it. And black means you've disabled the device on the dashboard. To add a device, you click up here to add device. Starts off with flip phone. So this is that physical white phone that's on a desk. You've got these manufacturers to choose from. And if you click on a manufacturer, you see the various models that are available. And these are for auto provisioning for supported phones. You click on the model, and then you give it a name, right? So Angela's phone. And then you put in the MAC address. The MAC address is unique to each phone. Usually it's a sticker on the back of the phone. It can be a sticker on the box that the phone came in. Also, if you power up the phone, most of them under their menu status, you can find the MAC address that way. But you enter that information here, you click on create device, and then you would assign it to one of your staff members. Now, within the dashboard here, you're done. However, on the phone, you need to get into the phone's web user interface, and you need to enter in a URL under the auto provisioning tab. Basically, you're telling the phone, hey, go here. It goes there, it grabs it, it gets its configuration file. It will reboot a couple of times as it loads that file and applies it, and then it will show up as a green device. Now, for the specifics about that URL, you want to go to the Dash support pages. On the right-hand side, under VoIP phones, you're looking for auto provisioning phones. It will have screenshots and the actual URL to input. Cell phone and landline, these are basically the same, so I'm just covering it once. But you give it a name, you put +1 area code and phone number, and then whichever user you're assigning it to, and then you click on create device. Now, once you've done that, you go into advanced. Oops. Okay. So this is what the default for a cell phone or landline looks like. So when Dash sends a call to a cell phone or a landline, right, that phone will ring, you'll pick up, and immediately you will hear, this is a forwarded call, please press 1. By pressing 1, you're telling the system, yes, you are there, and yes, you want to take this call, right? It will then connect that call to you. That doesn't work for every instance. For instance, like if you want to send calls to an automated answering service, right, that automated answering service can't press 1. So in a case like that, what you would want to do is put a check mark here for allow use of cell phone voicemail. So now you don't, when the system sends a call to that cell phone or landline, it's not going to wait for that pressing the 1. It's going to hear that pickup tone and say, oh, this is a connected call, and connects the call right away. Now, that's great for an automated answering service. For some people, that's not great for the cell phone, right? If you're actually sending it to your actual cell phone, you may not want your business calls to end up on your personal cell phone's voicemail. So that's why, by default, this is actually unchecked. Now, the other thing that comes up is when a call is sent to a cell phone. So for instance, let's say customer Mary is calling you. It gets to your cell phone. You don't recognize customer Mary's phone number on your cell phone because keep original caller ID has been checked, right? So that's what's displaying is customer Mary's phone number. You're like, I don't know this number. I'm not answering it because I've gotten way too many of these weird phone calls lately to my cell phone, even though I'm on the do not call list for things. So then you miss a business call, or she goes to voicemail, but then you're not ever able to, you're constantly playing phone tag. So if you uncheck this, what happens instead is the phone number that shows up on your cell phone is your main company number, right? And what I mean by that main company number, let's go back to the dashboard here, right? That's this one up here. This main number, that's the number that would show up on your cell phone. So that way you know, oh, this is a business call, not some random telemarketer, most likely. So then you can answer it and then hopefully get that business. All right, next up we got soft phones. First, you get this little warning message about wireless technology, basically saying, hey, for E911, you may not want to call 911 from your soft phone because you may not be at the address that's typically associated with your phone number, right? Because you're moving around. You click close, and you have the screen here. Now, the system is defaulting you to using a third-party application, right? So that means you're using a soft phone from Counterpath, for example, or a Lin phone. Or under that VoIP phone list, or the SIP phone list that we showed earlier, you didn't see your manufacturer, or you didn't find a model number that was close to your phone, but you still want to try to use it. Those are the two instances you would use the third-party soft phone. So you would give it a name, then you would copy and paste the SIP username. If you click on the SIP password, you will reveal the SIP password. You would copy that and paste that into like a text file. And again, you copy this the realm information, right? You would use those three pieces of information to program the soft phone or VoIP device that you want to use. And then assign it to a user, click on Create Device. Now, if you wish to use the VirtualPBX soft phone application, right here underneath where it says Realm, you click on it where it says Use Third-Party Application. That flips it to say Use VirtualPBX application. You give it a name, you assign it to a staff member, you click on Create Device. When you click on Create Device, that staff member will get an email saying, hey, your soft phone's been created and ready to use. Here's your username, here's your password. If they're going to use the mobile version of the app, then they can simply go to the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store, download the PBX phone, and then once it's done downloading and installing, they can then use that username and password they got from their email to log into the app on their cell phone. If you're going to use the desktop version of the app, there is a license fee associated with that. So you're going to want to go to the web store, store.virtualpbx.com, order the appropriate desktop version. There's Mac OS and Windows. And then you'll get a download link, and then you can use the username and password to log in there. Web phone, pretty easy. You got that same wireless information, but you give it a device name and then you assign it to a user. You click on Create Device. When you do that, the web phone uses the same login information as your Dash login. And so then you can just go to webphone.virtualpbx.net, enter in your login information. Again, remember to use Chrome or Firefox on a computer, and then you can use that browser to make and receive calls. All right, let's go to the Greetings Manager. Here you see your greetings on the account, their name, the source, right? TTS, text to speech. Upload means you uploaded a file. Recording means you recorded it over the phone. You can download these files to listen to them to see if they're still relevant. If you click on the little wrench icon here, you can change the name or delete the file. Up here, you have the option to add, right? So you can add, you give it a name, and then you find a .wave.mp3 recorded in mono under 1 megabyte. And then after you click upload, or you click on create greeting, and then it will upload it and add it to this list. So like I have multiple files here called tests, for example, so I can click on wrench icon and say, let's just get rid of that. And that's just one less file I have to deal with being in my system. Right, so anywhere where you can choose from an already existing file for your media files, right, this is the list it's pulling from. So 76 is kind of a lot to always scroll through. Groups is short for ring groups. This is for departments, generally speaking. Now, groups and ACD queues are related, right? ACD queues have more advanced routing options available to them. The main limiting factor on queues right now is that you can only send calls to a VoIP device on an ACD queue. In a ring group, we can send calls to a VoIP device as well as cell phones or landlines. Creating a group, you click Add Group, you give it a name and an extension number, and you click and drag the people you want to be in the group. And then you would click on Create Group. Once a group's created, you can click on the name. You can always change the name. And then you have group call attempts, right? So basically, how many times can an inbound call attempt to ring everybody in the group? And over here to the right, you got little arrows, so you can increase that or decrease it down. If you click on the members box, this is how you control the routing for calls in the group. Now, along the top here, you've got timestamps, right? So 0 seconds, 20, 40, 60, 80, blah, blah, blah. This one here is adjustable, right? So you can make it, oh, yeah, it's not letting me type in here. But by default, a new group is set to 120 seconds, but you can change that. Now, here are my staff members. I can click distribute, so I can ring these people in this order. If I want to change the order, right, I can do something like that, click and drag people in the right order. I click distribute again. These are sliders, as you noticed earlier, as you may have noticed earlier, so I can also do a routing like this. Just, right, this is referred to as blast ringing within telecom. Basically, ring everybody at the same time until someone picks up. Now, groups, when a call comes into the group, the system doesn't know if, or there's no feedback for the system to know if a user is already on a group call. So let's say call number 1 comes in, Bob answers it, right? So he's helping a call customer. While he's on the phone, a second call comes in. Bob will hear a call waiting beep on his side, letting him know another group call came in, right? And he'll keep getting that beep until either Jan, Gene, or David pick up the call. Once they do, the call waiting beep stops, and he goes on. So that's something to keep. That's one of the disadvantages of a group versus a queue. Groups, you can have extensions or multiple extension numbers and a phone number, right? So this phone number goes directly into this group, bypasses your auto attendants. For your queues, you can only have either an extension or a phone number. Right. And then we've got group features. First up, we got ringback. If you enable this, this allows you to upload a media file, right? .wav, .mp3, recorded in mono under 1 megabyte. This will play until one of your staff members picks up, right? So hold music as they wait for a staff member to pick up. Next action, if you enable this, say if no one answers, send the calls to, in this case I'm sending it to a voicemail, which is fairly common. However, you can send them back to your main open hours, right? So your virtual receptionist. You can send it to one of your other auto attendants. You can send it to one of your call queues. You can send it to a specific device. You can send it to one of your other ring groups. You can send it to a specific user, and then voicemail boxes. Allow call forward. If you enable this, you're letting your users make use of call forwarding, meaning they're not going to be at their normal desk phone that they use every day, but they still want to be able to take the group calls. Caller ID prepend. This is, again, a VoIP feature. You can add additional text or numbers in front of the caller ID that shows up on their VoIP phones to let them know what the call is about, right? So useful for people in multiple groups. All right, numbers. It shows your numbers on the account and where they're going. Again, any gear icon, right? You can click on and adjust the caller ID, E91, and prepend. Under spare numbers, right, you can buy additional numbers. If you want to get rid of numbers, right, so I have a lot of spare numbers here, and this is jacking up my bill. So I can go through, and decide, oh, which numbers do I want? Which ones do I want to keep? All right, so I'll get rid of these numbers. I now have this option here to delete that just showed up after I clicked on those checkboxes. I click delete. It says, are you sure? I'm saying yes, delete these numbers. It says, yay, these 5 numbers have been removed from your account. You notice the list got cut down, so I just saved some money on my bill every month. All right, if you click on port, this will begin the port process. You give it a name. You choose local, US local or toll free, and you would click next. Then the system is going to ask you to upload a bill copy. It will also give you the option to download a blank letter of agency, and then later to upload a completed and signed letter of agency, or LOA, as well as some additional information about the port process itself. Once you've submitted those 2 documents, you'll get an automated email saying you successfully submitted your port request. By the next business day, you should get a second email from our porting team saying, yes, we did get your documents successfully and we have submitted the port request. All right, so if you don't get that second email, you want to contact porting at virtualpbx.com, find out if there's been a delay or whatnot. Or if for some reason, like you clicked upload and it didn't complete, or you got an error message, you can always email porting, P-O-R-T-I-N-G, at virtualpbx.com. You can include the bill copy and the completed and signed LOA. They can still process the port request that way. Right? You don't have to do it through the UI. For the LOA, right, the letter of agency, when there's a section there for the company information, right, so business name, address, etc., that information should match what your current carrier has on file for you. So if you're porting, say, from Comcast to VirtualPBX, right? Whatever Comcast has on file for that phone number, whatever company name, whatever address, that's what should be on that the letter of agency, not whatever business name you have with VirtualPBX. Right? Likewise, when I say signed, it does need to be signed or digitally signed, right? You can print it out and someone can sign it with an actual pen, or you can use a digital signature. But if you just type in, Bob Smith, where in that signature field, that's going to get rejected by the other carrier every time. Keep in mind that for porting, it takes time. A local number can port anywhere from 1 day up to, on average, about 2 weeks. Right? The 1 day we've seen is typically like a Google Voice number that's already been unlocked. That's almost always comes back, ready to port the next day. Toll-free numbers usually take about 3 to 5 business days, assuming there's no errors, right? If our porting team gets an error message, it's relatively generic, right? It's going to say, address mismatch. They won't tell us, oh, there's an extra digit in the address or the zip code was off, right? They just say address, zip code, mismatch. That's all we get. That's what we will communicate to you, and so you'd want to then contact your current carrier to find out what they actually have on file for you. Also, for porting purposes, you need to have active accounts on both sides of the port until the port completes. So once you get an email from our porting team saying, hey, your port's completed, what that means is, yes, the number is with us. We've also tested the number to make sure it works properly. At that point, if you have no other phone numbers on that account with the other carrier, you can close your account. That would also apply if you're porting out from VirtualPBX. Once they let you know they have the numbers, you could then tell us that you want to close the account. Not that we want you to leave. All right, users. Adding a user, you click on Add User. You enter their first and last name. The email address you use for login, that is unique for each user. Right? So if you have 5 people making use of support at virtualpbx.com, only one of them would get to use that to log in with. Right? You would have to create like support 1, support 2, etc. As an admin, you would then create a password for that user, and then you assign an extension number. Now, this system is saying that the next available extension number I have is 1008. because I started with extension 1000, but I can enter in something else, right? So let's say I have multiple auto attendants, and I'm said, okay, for this new auto attendant I created, the people associated with it, I'm giving you extension, starting with extension 4000. So this next person I'm creating, you're 4210. Right, by default, the system will create a voicemail box for that user. That voicemail box is intrinsically tied to that user. Right, so if they have a VoIP phone associated with them too, right, their voicemail lamp on that VoIP phone will light up if they have voicemail in their voicemail box, for example. You have the option here to include in the user directory. You can always change that later. You can send emails to an alternate address. So if you check this and you put an email address here, this email address will supersede the login app email address in terms of sending voicemails for where to send voicemails to, or for the password reset, or for sending soft phone credentials. And then probably the most important one, send credentials to the user, right? Put a check mark there, they'll get an email with their login information. If you only need to create one person, you just click on create user. If you need to add more people, create user and add another. Once a user is created, you see here the little gray person icon, that's your standard user. A person with a blue suit is an admin. If you click on their name, you can always change their name. If you click on change credentials, you can change their email as well as their password. You also have the option here to send them the password reset if they want to set their own password. Voicemail box PIN, you can enter in a PIN number here. Now, if your staff is predominantly using VoIP phones, you don't have to set up a voicemail box PIN, because once you have the VoIP phone set up on the user, they can hit *98 on their VoIP phone. That will log them into their voicemail box directly. And the first time they do that, the system will prompt them to create a PIN number as well as to record a voicemail greeting. For your cell phone and landline users, you would need to set up a PIN number for them. All right, here you got, again, the option to send to an alternate address, as well as the option to include in the company directory. This is a pull down where you can make a user to an admin, or an admin back to a user. This is the time zone for the user. This is the display language, English, French, German, or Russian, right? And that's just what displays here within the web UI for that user. The ringing timeout, the default for a user is 20 seconds, but this is how much time the system will ring to the devices on that user. 45 would be good for someone who's making use of a cell phone. Extension number or extension box, you can add multiple extensions to a user or unassigned. Phone number, again, users can have their own phone numbers. You can add from spare or by name numbers. But yeah, these phone numbers will go directly to this user, right? Again, bypassing your virtual receptionist or auto attendants. Devices, you can add from spare devices, meaning devices you've already added to the account, or you can just add new devices. Same option here. I find it personally easier to add the VirtualPBX soft phone and the web phone on the user page. That way I know it's already assigned to the right person. And then I just click on Save Changes, and then that person gets the email for the soft phone, for example. User features. Caller ID number. So for any of your staff members that have their own phone number, you can turn this feature on, and then when they make outbound calls, their personal phone number shows up on the caller ID versus one of the company numbers, right? So good for you, like your salespeople. So that way, when they making prospect calls, the people call them back directly. Call forwarding. So you have off, on, and failover mode, right? Off means you're not using it. On means you know you're not going to be by your desk phone, so send calls to your mobile phone. So that way you can still answer calls. Failover mode, this is for your VoIP phone users, right? So the system will detect if their VoIP phone loses registration, and say a call happens to come into the user at that time, the system will then automatically make use of call forwarding to send it to their cell phone, for example. So that way your staff members can still get their calls and then go, hey, what's wrong with my VoIP phone? Probably power cycle the phone or check with their internet connection. Hot desking is a VoIP related feature. If you click enable, there we go. You create a hot desk ID. I usually suggest making it people's extension number, but you can use whatever you want. This is for use when your staff members are in an office environment where they may switch desks from day to day, or even within their shift, right? They're in a shared office environment, and they may be at a different desk. So today's Tuesday, I walk into the office, and I sit down at desk number 7. I pick up the VoIP phone. I hit *11. That turns on hot desking for that phone. It's going to ask me for the hot desk ID. If I've enabled a PIN, then it will ask me for that PIN number, and then it will say calls will be sent to this device. Now, for the rest of my workday, any calls that come into my user, whether it's from a group, a queue, whatever, right, it will ring at that phone that I'm sitting at. At the end of my day, I hit *12. That turns off hot desking. I go home. The next time I come into the office, someone's already sitting at desk number 7. I'm like, oh, too bad. All right, desk 42, you're it. I sit down, hit *11, enter my hot desk ID, and now I'm getting calls at that phone. Voicemail, again, was created when the user was created. The fax box, so users can have their own fax boxes. Right? You have the option here to select from a spare number, buy a number, or add a new extension. The add a new extension would avoid having to add additional phone number, right? So if you're trying to save some money. The downside is that you're then relying on the person faxing to you to possibly change their habits, right? Because they'd have to dial your main number, and then when they get to that main greeting, then they enter in the extension number, right? And so you'd have to find one that is not being used. And then they would hit the send fax button on their phone, on their fax device. Some fax machines, they may not be able to do that. And especially with e-fax services, they may not be able to do that either. So that's something to be aware of. That's why typically I recommend just use a spare number or buy a new number if you're going to have a fax box on a user. Conferencing, conference bridge. When you click enable, it shows you your conference room phone number. The conference room number will match your extension number by default. And as an admin, you just need to create a PIN number for the conference room, and then you click on Save Changes. Now, the conference room PIN number and also the call forwarding, these are things that your users can adjust themselves to some degree, right? So the conference room PIN number, they can adjust that themselves under the user portal. And your users can set up call forwarding themselves either through the user portal or from their VoIP phone. So that's something to bear in mind. All right, follow me. This is for users with multiple devices. If you click enable, this is how it starts. You just need to tell the system what phones you're actually going to make use of. I can make use of all 3 if I want to. Up here, again, you get that timestamp with that box for the total time. Right, just like groups, I can click distribute. I can change the order. Right, I can do sliders to ring them all for the same amount of time. Right. Just depends on how you want to handle it. Music on hold, you can have custom music on hold for each of your staff members. Again, you just upload a file, .wav, .mp3, recorded in mono under 1 megabyte. Click the little upload icon and then save changes. Customize call recording. So when you first click enabled, the system, it'll look like this. So you need to decide which ones of these kinds of calls you're actually going to record. So inbound internal means a call comes to me from a coworker. right? Coworker Bob's calling me about the Super Bowl, right? Inbound external, customer Angela is calling me because she wants status on her order, right? Outbound internal, I am calling coworker Bob. I'm telling him that his pick is wrong, and my team's going to win the Super Bowl, right? Outbound external means I'm calling customer Angela back, letting her know her order has shipped, giving her tracking information. And then you would click on Save Changes. You don't have to do all of them enabled if you don't want to, obviously. And then Do Not Disturb means send calls to this user right to voicemail. Voicemail boxes. So this shows all your voicemail boxes on the account. User voicemail boxes, right, will have this field filled out. You can create your own voicemail boxes up here, right? You give it a name, a voicemail box number, and a PIN number. And then you would click on Create Voicemail Box. You would do that for like your ring groups or for any of your ACD queues. Once they're created, if you click on the little wrench icon, under Advanced, you want to get a greeting media file right here under Media File. So you can either call in to the system, right? When you call into the virtual receptionist, you hit *97. That tells the system you want to get to a voicemail box. It's going to ask you for the voicemail box number and then the PIN number, and then you'll have the option to record it over the phone, or you can just upload a file, right? .wav, .mp3, recorded in mono under 1 megabyte. You also see here I have a temporary file. Every voicemail box has an option for a temporary file. So this is for that out of office or vacation voicemail greeting that you can have playing while a person's out of the office. And then when they come back, you just set the temporary file back to none, and then their main file will play instead. Next up, recipients. So for your user voicemail boxes, they already have one recipient built in, right? That's what the email address used for login is unique, or their alternate address, right? But say the email address used for login, that is automatically your recipient email address for the voicemail. If you want to have additional voicemail boxes, or the voicemail sent to additional staff members, or in the case of a manually created voicemail box, you would want to add at least one person, right? So you put add user there, or add recipients, click in their email address, and then if you only need to add one, you click Save Changes. If you need to add multiple, you would click Add again to add a second person, etc. So once you have a media file and you've added recipients, then you can go to Options. And the first thing you can do is click on the box in front of Already Set Up. So that way the system knows, hey, it's ready to go. And you've got some other options here. The main ones that come into play or that people ask about are these two right here. So voicemail boxes on Dash are limited to 100 messages. After you get to 100 messages, if someone calls in and tries to leave a message, they get an announcement saying, hey, the voicemail box is full, please try again later. Right? Eventually, they'll probably email you or connected to someone and say, hey, I tried to leave a voicemail, but I couldn't. So then you have to go in either as an admin to the voicemail manager to delete messages, or the user would have to go in themselves to delete the messages. To avoid that, by default on voicemail boxes, delete after notification is automatically checked. So when a caller leaves a voicemail, right, the system will automatically email that person or whoever the recipients are saying, hey, you have a voicemail. Now, also by default, we have the second option here, attach messages to email. Right? That means there's an attachment, right? So you can double click on it. It's a .mp3 file. You can then listen to it directly on your computer. Right? With those two checked, that means A, your staff members have been notified, right, that got a voicemail, and they can listen to it right there on their computer. So then the system will delete after that notification email sent out. So that way their voicemail boxes don't get full. Now, maybe your staff members prefer to call in to listen to their voicemails, or they like to go into the user portal. You can then uncheck delete after notification, so that way the voicemail stays on the system so they can go through the user portal or they can call in and listen to it over the phone. Right? And if you uncheck attach messages to email, then they won't get the attachment on the email, which means they would have to log in over the phone or via the user portal. advanced routing. Oh, there we go. So on this account, I have what's called direct inward system access, or DISA, or DISA. If this is enabled, this allows your staff members to call into the system with a cell phone or a landline, and then make an outbound call through the system. And that way, on that outbound call, their caller ID isn't their personal cell phone number, but your main company number, right? So again, under dashboard, under the caller ID, right, that will be the caller ID that shows up. So first, you would enable this feature. You click Edit Settings. I always recommend adding an extension number, and then you would click on Save Changes. So staff member, right, we will say Dawn, right? She picks up her cell phone. She calls into main number, brings to virtual receptionist. She then enters in this extension number. Then the system will prompt her for the PIN number. Then she'll hear dial tone again. Then she gets area code and phone number of where she's calling. Right? Call goes out. The caller ID that shows up is the main number she called, is your default main number instead of her cell phone number. Now, this is not enabled on most accounts by default, just because it is a potential for fraud. Right? If someone's able to figure out the PIN number, they can make outbound calls on your account, and you may not know about it right away. In the future, some accounts will also be able to see their select route settings here as well. Call logs, this shows your call history on your account. Green arrow coming to the right, that means that's an inbound call coming into the system. You can click on the call to get some additional details. Like here, is a call went to this device. Lose race usually means that there's multiple devices or users involved, so someone else picked up before these people could. Normal clearing just means the call ended normally, right? There was nothing unusual about how the call ended. If you ever see bow out, that's typically in relation to a cell phone, because there's essentially two legs of a call, and if it didn't get connected, there's a bow out label to clear out the cell phone connection. There's also, you notice here on these calls, there's always a fire hydrant icon. This is to report a call. So this will create an email. It will have the technical details of the call. I strongly recommend that you type into the body of that email what happened, or what you experienced or what you didn't experience, right? Like the system says, hey, I was offered a call, but my phone never rang, right? That's something our staff would want to know as they further investigate what was going on. Also, if you see a yellow arrow going to the left, that's an outbound call from the system. Right, you can always download the call log. It will be in a CSV. If you do custom, you can expand the date range to something you want to use. Right, if you go to feature codes, right, I've mentioned a couple of these already, but these are essentially dial pad shortcuts on their phones to make use of, on VoIP phones mostly, to navigate through the system and make use of different features. These are also published on our support pages, so you don't have to log in to look at them all the time. All right, so we've been on the dashboard this whole time. Let's go over to ACD queues. ACD stands for Automatic Call Distribution. This is a call center level feature. You can click Add New Queue. Now, this is our standard ACD queues. These range in price, I believe, from $15 to $30 per month per queue. Again, you might want to, if you're interested in this, you want to talk to our services team just to make sure if it's on your plan or not, and then what's most cost effective for you. Now, over here on the details, you give it a queue name, and then you either select a phone number, right, from a spare number, or you assign it either spare number, new number, or you assign it an extension number. Then you got queue routing strategy. Unfortunately, the pull down is not working here, but you've got ring all, right? So it rings everybody at the same time. Round robin, which will average out the calls among all your staff members over time. This one here is most idle, meaning whoever's been waiting for the call the longest gets the next call that comes in. You've got least offered, right? So let's say Bob and Mary are logged in my queue. Bob's been offered 20 calls. Mary's been offered 5. Under least offered, the next call that comes in goes to Mary, right? Because she's only been offered 5 calls to Bob's 20. And then there's least calls. That means least amount of connected calls. So in that 20 and 5 scenario, let's say Bob's spoken to 2 out of 20 of the offered calls. Mary's spoken to all 5 of her offered calls. Under least calls, the next call that comes in would go to Bob. Now, in that case, actually both least offered and least calls, if someone new logs in, right, that new person, right, we'll say Matt logs in, he gets the next call that comes in, right, because he has the least offered or least calls because he's new into the system. All right, hold treatment, you can upload a file, right, .mp3, .wav, recorded in mono, etc. Now, there's also ACD Queues Pro, which start at $99. That hold treatment there, you have more options, right? So you can have things like announce their position, announce their average wait time. You can have different multiple media files play as well, like at different times. Queue timeout in seconds. This is how much time an inbound caller can wait on hold. Queue call limit. You can limit the number of people who are in the queue. Now, this is people who are waiting on hold. This is on top of who's already connected to one of your agents. If you set this to 0, that means you have no limit. Timeout immediately if empty, if this is enabled. This means if you have no staff members logged in and a call comes into the queue, the system will treat it as if they've already hit this 3,600 second time limit. Escalation queue, if you have this selected to one of your other queues, this means if all your staff members are busy, right, and the system can't offer a call to anybody, it will then send callers to a second queue to be sending callers to, right? So that way they have a chance to speak to someone. Now, escalation call flow after timeout. So after this 3,600 second timer has been reached, where are you sending them? Right now I'm sending it to voicemail, but I can send it nowhere, right? So the call just ends. I can send it to one of my other attendants. I can send it to a specific phone. I can send it to the user directory. I can send it to one of my ring groups. I can send it to a media file. I can send it to a specific user and voicemail boxes. Keep in mind that even if you have an escalation queue in place, this 3,600 second timer is still in place for that call because it started in this queue, right? So call comes into this queue, everyone's busy, sends it to a second queue. The timer is still going based off of the time they entered this first queue, and once they hit that, they will be sent to this queue's escalation queue timeout, not the secondary queue. All right, agent recovery. After an agent is done with a call, this is basically gives them time after that call before the system will offer them a second call from this queue. That's measured in seconds. You can obviously put that at 0 so they have no time. Force away on reject or missed. Right? If this is enabled, that means if a staff member misses a call, the system will automatically put them in away mode, and they have to put themselves as ready to be able to take another call. And then agent connect timeout. This is how much time the system tries to connect a call to a staff member. And since they only can use VoIP phones, 20 seconds is typically plenty of time. If I click over here under members, Right, so these are my members that are in the queues or are available to be in the queues. If I click on manage, now these are people on my account, but they're not yet available to be in the queues. If I want them to be, I just click on their name, I click add as a member, and now Mia should show up. There she is. Now she can be in, I can assign her to any of my queues. So now I go back to the member or the queues. If I click on a queue here, I can add agents, and I can click and drag and add Mia as a member of this queue. Right, add managers. Once an agent is in a queue, they can be then made a manager for the queue. Again, you just click and drag. Now, as far as your agents are concerned, right, they would mouse over here to get to queues. Then they would click on begin session. That logs them in. We'll see here, I'm in. I'm red because I'm marked away. Right, it's got a timer going here. When I'm ready to take calls, I just mark all as ready. So now I turn green, so I'm ready for call. Right, if I'm blue, that means I'm on an inbound call. Yellow means I'm on an outbound or external call, and gold means I'm on a wrap-up time. This little phone icon here, this allows me to select the device I am taking calls on. So it does need to be a VoIP device, and we do recommend just selecting the one for your primary, and then you can click that to turn it off. Now, when I go on lunch, right, I can mark myself away, and at the end of my day, I would just end my session. All right, blacklists. Blacklists allow you to create a list of numbers that you don't want to connect to your system, right? So you click edit blacklists. You click add if you don't have one in place. Otherwise, you select an existing list. You give it a name. Block anonymous, if you turn this on, that means if we don't get valid inbound caller ID, the system will just treat it as to block it, which means that the invalid caller ID that's coming in, they get busy tones. Otherwise, you would add phone numbers, +1 area code and phone number, and basically each number you want to add, you just click add and put the same format. You would click save. You go back to settings, and then you make sure that list is over here on the right under selected. So then that lets you know that, hey, these lists are active. Any phone numbers on these lists, when they try to connect to any of the phone numbers I have on my account, they get busy tone. Make sure you click update. All right, next up we've got dynamic caller ID. This is actually a relatively new feature. This allows you to create essentially your own feature codes to change your caller ID. Now, you can only change your caller ID to phone numbers you have on your account, but if you create new rule, you give it a name, and then you choose the caller ID to display on the account. Unfortunately, the pull down is not working. And then you enter in the feature code, right? Star, blah, blah, blah. And then you create the rule. Something like that. You can also use caller ID when area code is dialed matches, meaning you have a specific area code. But the most common is so far has been use the star codes. Right, you can always edit an existing rule or delete an existing rule. All right, so in the case of like I have multiple main numbers and I want my staff members to have the right caller ID show up when they make an outbound call, that's when you would make use of dynamic caller ID. I believe this is a plan specific feature. So if this is something you would be interested in making use of, you would want to talk to our account services team to make sure you get on the right plan. Next up, we got the fax manager. So as an admin, you can get to any fax box on the account. And so you can see what's been going on. You see here on January 28th, we sent to this number, or we're sending from this number, sorry, sending it to this person. Although we do know that the fax did not go through. If you go to email to fax logs, you'll see the thumbs down. You can click on the little eyeball icon here, and you can see, oh, there was a problem converting the attachment. Now that could be because there was an encryption on the file, or it might have been too large, etc. This is also, I'm going to skip over here to voicemails because this is essentially the same thing, or very, very similar. You can get to any voicemail box on the account. You can see messages here, right, January 27th. The target phone number is the number that was originally dialed, the duration of the file. You can play back the message, you can download it. Right, if you click here, you can, this gives you an idea of how to sort, right, if you have many messages. You can also mark a message for deletion, if it's read, listened, etc. You also have the option here to move it, right? So if this voicemail should have been to Bob, I could send it to his voicemail box directly. All right, monitor. Again, this is a plan-specific feature, but this lets you see the status of your staff members, right? Green, waiting for a call, blue on an inbound call, yellow on an external call, red marked away, gold on recovery time from a queue. The number manager, this takes you to your numbers page and specifically to your spare numbers, so you can remove numbers you're not using. The recording manager, this takes you to your call recording storage area, right? Recordings.virtualpbx.com. It uses your Dash login, but then you can view your recordings, you can listen to them, download them, etc. Reports is in beta. If this is advanced reporting, so you can make your own reports. It's a little bit probably more useful than the call logs for most people. I believe if you're interested in this, you're going to want to talk to our account services team because will be something that's plan specific, and then they'll also set you up with a training. Webhooks, this is to link Dash via APIs to other software. For this, if you're interested, you want to talk to our sales team. They have some additional qualifying information. If you want to see samples of things we have done with APIs, you would want to go to developer.virtualpbx.com. You can see some sample code. And then we've got the user portal. So on the user portal, every user has their own user portal. You can only get to your own user portal, right? So as an admin, I can't get to anyone else's user portal. I can see my voicemail, right? I can listen to it here. I can download it here. If I put on the little check mark here, then I've got the options to say new. I can mark it as listened or none. Or sorry, I can change my view. Sorry, this is a change your view, right? So everything on the page, only new messages or listened messages. Likewise, over here, I can mark it as new, mark it as listened, or mark it for deletion. I can see my call history, right? So calls that I've made or received. You can see my faxes. Oh, again, fax box on this account is not working. The contact list, this is within your Dash account, right? So your uh, various extension numbers, your ring groups, your attendance, etc. This is not something a user can add to themselves, right? So like your sales staff wouldn't be able to add their client list to this contact list. This is just within the Dash account. Conference tab, once it loads, again, as a user, I can adjust the PIN numbers here. I also have these options here. Do people join muted or deafened, as well as we do play entry and exit tones. Up here, I can invite other Dash users into my conference. I can lock a conference. I can mute everybody. I can unmute everybody or hang up the call. Once you're actually in a conference, you can also mute a specific participant or unmute them, as well as kick a specific participant. And then under settings and devices, this is where a user can set up their call forwarding on their own without you. They can also see the status of their devices as far as the system is concerned. And that is everything. So I'm going to go head back to the dashboard. I'll hang out here for a minute or so, see if anyone has any questions. I don't think I've seen anything pop up in chat. And we will go from there. Yeah, if you do not have any questions, then I thank you for your time today. But as I said, I'll wait for a minute or two, see if anyone has any questions going forward. All right, not seeing any questions come through, so I'm going to go ahead and end the stream. Thank you for your time today, and we will see you next Tuesday.